Dr. Hyun-Soo Kim pressed his face against the cold window of the research ship. Stars filled the darkness outside, but one thing caught his eye. A huge metal shape floated in the empty space ahead of them. It looked old and broken, like a giant piece of trash drifting through the void. "Captain Lee, are you seeing this?" Hyun-Soo called out to the bridge. Captain Dongwoo Lee walked over to look. His eyes went wide when he saw the massive structure. It was bigger than 3 Earth cities put together. Strange metal twisted and curved in ways that hurt to look at. Parts of it glowed with a dim blue light. "What is that thing?" Dongwoo asked. "I think it's a space station," Hyun-Soo said, "but not like any I've ever seen. The metal looks ancient, maybe thousands of years old." So-min Park joined them at the window. She was the ship's expert on old things and lost cultures. Her job was to study the remains of dead civilizations. When she saw the station, her mouth fell open. "Those patterns on the hull," she whispered. "They're not random. Someone carved them there on purpose." The research ship UES Endeavour moved closer to the strange station. As they got nearer, more details became clear. The surface was covered in deep scratches and holes from space rocks hitting it over many years. But between the damage, symbols glowed softly in the dark. "Those symbols are moving," Jinna Choi said. She was the security chief, and she always looked worried about danger. "Captain, I don't like this. Something that old shouldn't still be working." Dongwoo nodded but didn't order them to leave. "Dr. Kim, what do you think? Is it safe to get closer?" Hyun-Soo studied languages for a living. He knew how to read the writing of dozens of alien races. But these symbols were different. They seemed to shift and change as he watched them, like living things made of light. "I need to get on that station," Hyun-Soo said. "Those symbols might be writing. If they are, I need to study them up close." "Absolutely not," Jinna said. "We don't know what's over there. It could be dangerous." "Everything we do out here is dangerous," So-min argued. "But this could be the find of the century. Think about what we might learn." The captain thought for a long moment. Finally, he made his decision. "We'll send a small team over. Dr. Kim, Ms. Park, and 4 security guards. Full protective gear and constant contact with the ship." 2 hours later, Hyun-Soo floated through space in his bulky suit. The station loomed ahead like a metal mountain. Up close, the symbols were even stranger. They pulsed with soft light, almost like a heartbeat. "I'm reading breathable air inside," So-min reported through the radio. "The station has atmosphere. That's impossible after all this time." They found an opening in the station's side. It looked like a door, but it was shaped all wrong for human hands. Jinna went first, her weapon ready. The security guards followed. Then Hyun-Soo and So-min. Inside the station, everything glowed with the same blue light. The walls were covered in the strange symbols, thousands of them stretching in every direction. Some were small, like normal writing. Others were huge, covering entire walls. "My God," Hyun-Soo breathed. "It's like a giant library. All of this is writing." He pulled out his recording equipment and started taking pictures. But something odd happened when he looked at the symbols through his camera. They seemed to respond to his attention. Where he pointed the camera, the symbols grew brighter. "Dr. Kim," So-min called from across the room. "Look at this." She was standing in front of a wall where the symbols formed a large circle. In the center of the circle was a picture that looked almost like a star map. But the stars were arranged in patterns Hyun-Soo didn't recognize. "These aren't our stars," he said. "This map shows somewhere else, maybe somewhere very far away." As they explored deeper into the station, they found more rooms filled with the glowing writing. Hyun-Soo took thousands of pictures. The symbols seemed to tell a story, but he couldn't read them yet. He could see patterns, though. Some symbols appeared again and again like important words. "Captain," Jinna's voice crackled through the radio. "We should head back soon. We've been here for 3 hours." "Just a little longer," Hyun-Soo begged. "I'm starting to see connections between the symbols. I think I can figure out what they mean." He focused on one wall where the symbols seemed simpler than the others. Maybe they were like a children's book meant to teach the language to beginners. He studied them carefully, looking for patterns. One group of symbols kept appearing. Each time it was followed by different pictures, images of ships, planets, and strange creatures. Hyun-soo realized it might be a name or title. Void speakers, he whispered, not knowing why those words came to his mind. The moment he spoke, something changed. The symbols on the wall began to pulse faster. The light grew brighter. All around them, the station started to hum with energy. "What did you do?" Jinna shouted. "I don't know," Hyun-soo replied. "I just tried to read one of the symbols." The humming grew louder. Lights began turning on all over the station. Machines that had been silent for thousands of years suddenly came to life. In the distance, they could hear the sound of metal moving and systems starting up. "We need to leave now," Jinna ordered. "Everyone back to the ship." But as they ran toward the exit, Hyun-soo couldn't resist looking back at the glowing symbols. They were brighter than ever now, and he could swear they were trying to tell him something important, something about danger coming from far away, something about a fleet that had been sleeping for a very long time. Behind them, deep in the heart of the ancient station, powerful machines began sending a signal into deep space. The message traveled, faster than light, racing toward the edge of the galaxy where something vast and terrible had been waiting for someone to finally speak the right words. The void speakers had been found, and now they were waking up. 3 days had passed since Hyun-soo spoke those strange words on the alien station. The UES Endeavour was now racing back toward Earth, but they weren't alone in space anymore. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Boram Yoon from her station. She was the ship's computer expert, and her face was pale with worry. Dongwoo hurried over to look at her screens. What he saw made his blood run cold. Huge shapes were moving through space at the edge of the galaxy. They were massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. "How many ships are there?" Dongwoo asked. "I can't count them all," Boram replied. "The computer says at least 1,000, maybe more. And Captain, they're moving fast, faster than should be possible." Hyun-soo was still on the station working day and night to understand the alien writing. He barely ate or slept. The symbols seemed to call to him, begging him to read their secrets. So-min brought him food and tried to make him rest. "You can't keep going like this," she said. "You'll make yourself sick." "I have to understand," Hyun-soo replied without looking up from his work. "These symbols are trying to warn us about something terrible." Back on Earth, the news of the approaching fleet sent panic through every government and space agency. Tae Young-han, who spoke for humanity at the Galactic Council, found himself in the worst meeting of his life. The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of alien races. They were all angry and scared. The Kethmore Empire, a warrior race with 4 arms and red skin, demanded answers. "Your species has doomed us all," shouted their leader. "You woke something that should have stayed sleeping forever." The Veltar collective, beings made of living metal, spoke with voices like grinding gears. "Our ancient records speak of the void speakers. They consumed entire star systems before disappearing long ago." Tae-young tried to stay calm. "It was an accident. Our scientist was just trying to read their language. We didn't know what would happen." "Ignorance is no excuse," hissed a snake-like creature from the serpent worlds. "Because of humans, we all face extinction." While the council argued, Hyun-soo continued working on the station. He was starting to understand more of the alien language. The symbols told a story of a great civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. The void speakers had been the most powerful race ever known. They could travel between stars in the blink of an eye. They could destroy planets with their thoughts. They had conquered everything in their path. But then something had changed. Hyun-soo found symbols that seemed to show the void speakers growing tired. They had defeated every enemy and conquered every world. There was nothing left to challenge them. "Boram," Hyun-soo called through his radio, "I need you to come to the station. I found something strange." When Boram arrived, Hyun-soo showed her to a room deep inside the station. The walls were covered in flowing patterns that looked like circuits. But these weren't made of metal or wire. They were made of light itself. "This whole station is a computer," Boram whispered. "But it's like nothing I've ever seen." It's processing information in ways that shouldn't be possible. As she studied the alien technology, Boram made a shocking discovery. The station wasn't just a computer. It was connected to something far away. The signal Hyun-soo had accidentally sent was like knocking on a door, and something on the other side had heard the knock. "The fleet isn't just coming here," Boram told the captain. "They're responding to a wake-up call." The station sent them a message that said someone had finally learned to speak their language. Meanwhile, the first signs of the alien fleet began appearing throughout known space. Small ships, no bigger than fighters, suddenly showed up near populated worlds. They didn't attack. They just watched and scanned everything. On the colony world of New Busan, Governor Soo-jin-oh tried to make contact with one of the scout ships. She sent messages in every known language offering peace and friendship. The alien ship didn't respond with words. Instead, it sent out beams of light that touched every person, animal, and plant on the colony. The beams didn't hurt anyone, but they seemed to be recording everything, learning about every living thing they found. When Soo-jin tried to get closer to the ship, it simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only empty space. Similar encounters happened on dozens of worlds. The scout ships appeared, scanned everything they could find, and then disappeared. They seemed to be gathering information about all the different species in the galaxy. Back on the ancient station, Hyun-soo made another breakthrough. He found a section of symbols that seemed to be about the void speakers themselves. As he read them, he learned something that made him feel sick to his stomach. "They're not just powerful," he told So-min. "They're hungry. The symbols talk about consuming other races, not just defeating them or ruling them, actually feeding on them somehow." So-min looked at the glowing symbols with new fear. "You mean they eat other species?" "Not their bodies," Hyun-soo said. "Something else. Their knowledge, their culture, their essence, maybe. The symbols aren't clear, but it sounds like they take everything that makes a species unique and make it part of themselves." As if responding to his understanding, more symbols began to light up on the walls. These ones showed star maps with systems marked in different colors. Red marks seemed to indicate dead worlds. Yellow marks showed worlds that were dying. And there were so many red marks. "They destroyed hundreds of civilizations," Hyun-soo whispered, "maybe thousands. And then when there was nothing left to consume, they went to sleep to wait for new prey to evolve." On Earth, Admiral Woo Seok-jang was preparing humanity's defense fleet. Every ship that could fight was being armed and sent to form a line between Earth and the approaching aliens. But the numbers were hopeless. Humanity had maybe a few hundred warships, the aliens had thousands. "Sir," his aide reported, "the other species are sending their fleets too. The Kethamor, the Veltar, even the peaceful traders are arming their ships." Woo-seok nodded, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. If the ancient records were true, the Void Speakers had technology that was millions of years ahead of everyone else's. Their scout ships alone seemed more advanced than the best ships the younger races could build. Dr. H.L. Lim, a scientist studying the alien technology, made a discovery that chilled her to the bone. She had been analyzing the signals coming from the ancient station, trying to understand how they worked. "The alien language isn't just words," she told the research team. "It's somehow connected to the laws of physics themselves. When someone speaks it correctly, they're actually changing reality around them." This explained how the Void Speakers had become so powerful. Their language was a weapon that could reshape the universe itself, and now a human had learned to speak it. As the main alien fleet drew closer to inhabited space, one final message came from the station. It wasn't in symbols this time. It was a voice speaking directly into Hyun-soo's mind, using the alien language he was learning to understand. The voice was ancient and vast, like the sound of stars dying. It spoke of hunger that had lasted for eons. It spoke of a great awakening and a feast that would soon begin, and it thanked Hyun-soo for finally calling them home. The first attack came without warning. Governor Soo-jin-oh was having breakfast with her family when the sky above New Busan turned white with alien fire. It wasn't like the scout ships from before. This was something much bigger. A void speaker, Warship appeared over the colony like a metal mountain floating in the air. It was black and twisted, covered in the same glowing symbols that Hyun Soo had found on the station. Soo Jin ran to the emergency communication center. "This is Governor O to all colonies," she broadcast. "We are under attack. The aliens are here." But the aliens didn't seem interested in destroying everything at once. Instead, they sent down smaller ships that landed in the colony's central square. Creatures came out that looked almost human, but their skin was pale blue and their eyes glowed with the same light as the symbols. The aliens walked through the streets, studying everything they saw. They looked at buildings, plants, animals, and people with the same cold interest. When humans tried to talk to them, the aliens would stop and stare for a long moment, as if recording every word. "They're cataloging us," Soo Jin realized with horror. "Like we're items in a museum." When some of the colonists tried to run away, the aliens raised their hands. Beams of light shot out, not killing the humans, but freezing them in place. The colonists stood like statues, unable to move but still aware of everything happening around them. Then the aliens began their harvest. Soo Jin watched from her hiding place as the creatures touched the frozen humans. Where they made contact, streams of light flowed from the colonists into the aliens. The humans' eyes grew dim and empty, as if something essential had been stolen from them. "No," Soo Jin whispered. "They're taking our minds, our souls." She tried to send another message, but it was too late. Half the colony had been drained of whatever made them human. The aliens loaded the empty shells of people onto their ships and flew back to the main vessel. Then, as suddenly as they had come, the void speakers left. But they took something with them that could never be replaced. News of New Busan reached Earth within hours. Similar attacks were happening on colonies throughout human space and beyond. The aliens weren't trying to conquer worlds. They were harvesting the people who lived on them. On the ancient station, Hyun Soo felt sick as he read more of the alien symbols. Now that he understood more of their language, the terrible truth became clear. "They don't just destroy civilizations," he told Somin. "They absorb them. Every person they touch becomes part of their collective consciousness. The victims are still alive inside the aliens somehow, but they can never be free again." Somin looked at the symbols with growing fear. "How many species have they done this to?" "Thousands," Hyun Soo replied. "Maybe tens of thousands over millions of years. And each species they absorb makes them smarter and more powerful." But Hyun Soo had made another discovery that was even more disturbing. As he learned more of the alien language, he began to feel strange. Sometimes he would forget where he was or what he was doing. Other times, he would find himself thinking thoughts that didn't feel like his own. Dr. A-Cha Lim had been studying Hyun Soo's brain scans from a distance. What she found made her call an emergency meeting with Captain Dongwoo. "The alien language is changing him," she reported. "His brain patterns are shifting. Parts of his mind that used to be purely human are being rewritten." "Is he in danger?" Dongwoo asked. "We all are," A-Cha replied. "Because I think the changes are making him more like them. If he becomes too much like a void speaker, there might be no way to save him." Meanwhile, Admiral Woo-seok Jang was preparing for the largest space battle in human history. The combined fleets of all the galaxy species had gathered near Earth. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds, all united against the common threat. But their enemy was already proving to be beyond their ability to fight. The first engagement happened near the outer planets of the solar system. A void speaker ship, just one vessel, appeared near the Allied fleet. It was huge, but the Allies had hundreds of ships surrounding it. "All vessels, open fire," Admiral Jang commanded. Every weapon in the combined fleet fired at once. Missiles, energy beams, particle cannons, and weapons that bent space itself all struck the alien ship simultaneously. The attacks passed right through it without causing any damage. "Impossible," Jang muttered. "Nothing can resist that much firepower." The void speaker ship responded with a single pulse of energy. The pulse spread outward like a ripple in space itself. Every Allied ship it touched simply stopped working. Engines died, weapons powered down, and life support systems failed. Within minutes, thousands of the galaxy's best warriors were floating helplessly in space. The alien ship ignored them and continued toward Earth. On the station, Hyun-soo was experiencing something that terrified him. He could feel the alien fleet approaching, not through his instruments but through his mind. As his understanding of their language grew deeper, he was becoming connected to their collective consciousness. "I can hear them," he told Boram. "All of them. Millions of minds speaking as one voice." "What are they saying?" Boram asked. Hyun-soo's eyes were starting to glow with the same blue light as the alien symbols. When he spoke, his voice sounded different, older, more distant. "They're saying that the harvest is about to begin. They've been waiting so long for worthy prey to evolve. They're excited." Boram backed away from him. "Hyun-soo, you need to fight this. Don't let them change you." "I don't know if I can stop it," he replied. "The more I understand their language, the more I become like them. And Boram, part of me doesn't want to stop it. Their knowledge is incredible. They've seen the birth and death of stars. They know secrets of the universe that we can't even imagine." Dr. H.A. Lim made one more crucial discovery as she studied the alien technology. She found that humans had a unique quality that other species lacked. Most creatures that tried to learn the void speaker language were driven insane by it. Their minds couldn't handle the reality-altering effects of the words, but human brains were different. They were flexible enough to adapt to the alien concepts without breaking completely. This made humans the perfect candidates to become new void speakers. "That's why they're coming here," H.A. realized. "They're not just harvesting us, they want to recruit us. They want humans to join their collective and help them consume the rest of the galaxy." As the main void speaker fleet entered the solar system, their ships blotted out the stars. There were so many vessels that they formed a dark cloud around Earth. But they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they waited. Through the station's communication system, a voice spoke directly to every human on Earth. It was the voice of their ancient leader, speaking in the alien language that somehow everyone could now understand. "People of Earth," the voice said, "you have been chosen. Your species has the rare gift needed to join us in our eternal harvest. Surrender willingly, and you will become part of something greater than you can imagine. You will live forever, knowing everything we have learned across the ages." In cities around the world, people looked up at the alien fleet and felt a strange pull. The offer was tempting, to become part of an ancient race that had mastered the universe itself. But then reports came in from the colonies that had already been attacked. Images of empty-eyed humans who had been drained of everything that made them unique. Families destroyed, cultures erased, entire worlds turned into lifeless shells. On the station, Hyun-soo stood before the glowing symbols, his transformation nearly complete. His skin had taken on a pale blue tint, and his eyes burned with alien fire. He could feel the vast intelligence of the void speakers flowing through his mind. But somewhere deep inside, the human part of him was fighting back. He remembered So-min's worried face, Boram's friendship, and all the people counting on him to find a solution. "There has to be another way," he whispered, using both human words and the alien language at the same time. The ancient voice of the void speaker leader responded directly to his thoughts. "There is no other way, young interpreter. Join us willingly, or we will take what we need by force. The harvest begins now." The void speaker fleet surrounded Earth like a metal storm cloud. Their ships were so massive they blocked out the sun in some places. But instead of attacking immediately, they sent a single message to the ancient station where Hyun-soo was still working. "Send us the interpreter," the message said. "We will speak with him directly." Hyun-soo knew they meant him. His body was changing more each day. His skin had turned completely blue now, and strange symbols appeared and disappeared across his arms like living tattoos. When he looked in a mirror, his eyes glowed with the same light as the alien writing. "Don't go," So-min begged him. "They'll take what's left of your humanity." "I have to," Hyun-soo replied. His voice sounded strange now, like it was coming from very far away. "If I don't, they'll destroy everything." Captain Dongwoo wanted to stop him, but they all knew there was no choice. A small void speaker ship appeared next to the station, and Hyun-Soo stepped aboard without fear. The inside of the alien ship was unlike anything humans had ever built. The walls pulsed with living light, and the air itself seemed to whisper in the ancient language. Hyun-Soo found himself in a vast chamber where a single figure waited for him. The being called itself Mordak the Eternal. It looked almost human, but its skin was like polished metal and its eyes contained swirling galaxies. When it spoke, Hyun-Soo heard the voice not just with his ears but directly in his mind. "Welcome, young interpreter," Mordak said. "You have done well to awaken us. Now it is time for you to learn the truth about your species." "What truth?" Hyun-Soo asked. Mordak gestured, and the walls of the chamber changed. They now showed images of space, but not space as it looked today. This was the galaxy millions of years ago when the void speakers ruled everything. "We were the first," Mordak explained. "The first species to master the language that shapes reality itself. We consumed world after world, adding each civilization's knowledge to our own. We became gods." The images showed the void speakers at the height of their power. They could reshape planets with their thoughts and travel instantly between the stars. No other species could stand against them. "But then we faced a problem," Mordak continued. "We had conquered everything. There were no more worthy opponents, no more challenges to face. We had achieved perfect victory, and it was empty." Hyun-Soo saw images of void speakers standing on dead worlds, surrounded by the drained shells of the species they had absorbed. They looked bored and restless, like children who had broken all their toys. "So we made a plan," Mordak said. "We would sleep for millions of years, allowing new species to evolve and grow strong. But we also planted seeds throughout the galaxy, genetic templates that would eventually produce the perfect successors to our power." The chamber filled with images of DNA, but not natural DNA. This was artificial genetic code, designed and placed on specific worlds. Hyun-Soo's blood ran cold as he realized what he was seeing. "Humanity," he whispered. "Yes," Mordak confirmed. "Your species was our greatest creation. We designed your minds to be flexible enough to learn our language without madness. We gave you the curiosity to seek out ancient knowledge. We even influenced your cultures to develop the concepts of exploration and discovery." Back on Earth, Dr. Myung-Hee Shin was running genetic tests on human DNA samples from around the world. What she found confirmed humanity's worst fears. There were sequences in human genetic code that matched no known evolutionary pattern. They were clearly artificial, inserted by someone with technology far beyond anything natural. "We're not natural," she reported to the emergency council. "Humans were designed, created by the void speakers to serve as their replacements." The news spread panic through the population. Humanity's entire existence had been planned by alien predators. Every human achievement, every moment of progress had been guided by ancient manipulators who saw them as nothing more than useful tools. On the alien ship, Mordak continued the terrible revelation. "We scattered these genetic templates on 100 worlds, but most failed to develop properly. Some species became too violent and destroyed themselves. Others became too peaceful and stagnated. But humanity was perfect." Hyun-Soo felt sick as the truth sank in. "You're saying we were bred to be monsters like you." "Not monsters," Mordak corrected. "Gods. You were bred to inherit our role as shapers of reality, to continue the great harvest that gives meaning to existence itself." The chamber showed more images, these ones of possible futures. Hyun-Soo saw humans with glowing eyes and blue skin, leading fleets of ships to distant galaxies. He saw them consuming alien civilizations with the same cold efficiency as the original void speakers. "This is your destiny," Mordak said. "Join with us willingly, and we will teach you to use powers beyond imagination. Refuse, and we will take what we need by force." Meanwhile, on the research station, So-min and Bo-Ram were making discoveries of their own. They had found a section of alien writing that seemed different from the rest. These symbols were older and they told a different story. "Look at this," So-min called Bo-Ram over. These symbols talk about something called the first sorrow. It seems to be about the early days of the Void Speakers. As Boram studied the ancient text with the station's translation systems, a darker truth emerged. The Void Speakers hadn't always been the emotionless predators they were now. In the beginning, they had been much like humans, curious, creative, and capable of love. They chose to become monsters, Boram realized. The symbols say they gave up their emotions and individual identities to gain power. They turned themselves into a collective mind because they thought it would make them stronger. The text revealed that some Void Speakers had opposed this transformation. They had been labeled as weak and either absorbed into the collective or exiled to distant parts of the galaxy. The Void Speakers that remained had convinced themselves that emotion was weakness and that only perfect logic and endless hunger mattered. Back on the ship, Hyun-soo was struggling with his own transformation. He could feel his individual thoughts being pulled into something larger. The collective mind of the Void Speakers was trying to absorb him, to make him part of their eternal hunt for prey. But something was fighting back. Every time he started to lose himself in their vast consciousness, memories of his human life pulled him back. Images of So-min laughing at his jokes, Boram showing him how the ship's computers worked, the excitement he had felt when he first started learning about alien languages. "You're resisting," Mordak observed. "Interesting. Most species break much sooner." "I won't become like you," Hyun-soo said, though he could feel his resolve weakening. "You already are becoming like us," Mordak replied. "Feel the knowledge flowing through your mind. See how small your individual concerns seem compared to the vast scope of cosmic existence." It was true. Hyun-soo could feel himself changing, becoming something more than human but also somehow less. The collective offered infinite knowledge, but demanded he give up everything that made him unique. On Earth, the combined fleets of all galactic species were preparing for a final desperate battle. They knew they couldn't win against the Void Speaker's technology, but they had to try. Tae Young-han sent one last message to the alien fleet. "Humanity rejects your offer. We choose to remain ourselves, whatever the cost." The response came not in words but in action. Void Speaker ships began to move toward populated worlds throughout human space. The harvest was about to begin whether humanity cooperated or not, but in the depths of space, on an ancient station filled with glowing symbols, So-min and Boram had found something that might change everything. Hidden in the oldest sections of alien text were the original words of the Void Speaker language, words that spoke not of consumption and domination, but of creation and cooperation. The language itself isn't evil, So-min realized. It's what the Void Speakers chose to do with it that made them monsters. On the alien ship, Hyun-soo heard her discovery through his connection to the station's systems. For the first time since his transformation began, he felt hope. If the language could be used for destruction, maybe it could also be used for something else entirely. Something that even the ancient Void Speakers had forgotten was possible. Standing on the Void Speaker ship, Hyun-soo felt the weight of millions of years pressing down on him. His transformation was almost complete. His skin glowed with alien symbols, and his mind was connected to the vast consciousness of the Void Speakers. But something inside him refused to surrender. "You're fighting a battle you cannot win," Mordak the Eternal said. "Accept your destiny. Become what you were designed to be." Through his connection to the collective mind, Hyun-soo could feel the Void Speakers preparing to begin their harvest. Billions of alien consciousnesses, all focused on the same goal, consuming every other species in the galaxy and adding their knowledge to the collective. But as he touched their minds, Hyun-soo discovered something the Void Speakers had forgotten about themselves. Deep in their memories, buried under millions of years of cold logic, were traces of what they used to be. "You weren't always like this," he said to Mordak. "I can see your memories. You used to be individuals. You used to care about things other than conquest." "Those were weaknesses," Mordak replied. "We eliminated them to achieve perfection." "No," Hyun-soo said, his voice growing stronger. "They weren't weaknesses. They were what made life worth living." On the research station, So Min and Bo Ram had made a breakthrough. In the oldest sections of alien writing, they found symbols that the modern void speakers seemed to have forgotten. These ancient words spoke of cooperation instead of conquest, of building instead of destroying. The original void speakers weren't monsters, So Min reported to Captain Dongwu. They were explorers and teachers. They created the language to help different species understand each other better. What changed them? Dongwu asked. Loneliness, Bo Ram replied. The symbols tell a story of a species that became so powerful they had no equals. They consumed others not because they were evil, but because they were desperately searching for someone who could match their abilities. This revelation reached Hyun-soo through his connection to the station. Suddenly, he understood the truth, that the void speakers had hidden from themselves for millions of years. You're not hungry for conquest, he told Mordak. You're hungry for companionship. You destroyed every other advanced species because you were looking for equals, for friends. Friendship is an illusion, Mordak said, but his voice wavered. For the first time, only power is real. Then why did you create humanity? Hyun-soo challenged. If all you wanted was power, you could have made us into mindless slaves. But you gave us curiosity, creativity, and the ability to learn your language. You made us capable of becoming your equals, because that's what you really wanted. Through the collective consciousness, Hyun-soo felt a stirring among the void speakers. Some of them were beginning to remember what they had lost when they gave up their individual identities. On Earth, Commander Jiho Nam was leading a desperate mission to protect the research station. The void speakers had begun moving toward populated worlds, but Jiho's small fleet was determined to buy Hyun-soo more time. All ships form a defensive line, Jiho commanded. We may not be able to stop them, but we can slow them down. The human ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels, like insects trying to stop elephants. But they fought with courage that surprised even themselves. Some crews rammed their ships into alien vessels when their weapons proved useless. Others used themselves as shields to protect civilian transports trying to escape. The void speakers could have destroyed the human fleet instantly, but something made them hesitate. Through their connection to Hyun-soo, they were starting to remember what it felt like to admire courage in others. Back on the alien ship, Hyun-soo was preparing to do something no one had ever attempted before. He was going to use the void speaker, language not to destroy or consume, but to create something entirely new. What are you doing? Mordak demanded as Hyun-soo began to speak in the ancient tongue. Something you forgot was possible, Hyun-soo replied. I'm using your language to give instead of take. The words Hyun-soo spoke were unlike anything the void speakers had heard in millions of years. Instead of commands that bent reality to his will, he spoke requests that offered reality, new possibilities. Instead of taking knowledge from others, he offered to share knowledge freely. The effect was immediate and shocking. Throughout the void speaker fleet, individual consciousnesses began to separate from the collective. For the first time in eons, void speakers started to think as individuals instead of as parts of a single vast mind. Impossible, Mordak whispered, but even he was changing. His metal skin began to show emotion for the first time in millions of years. It's not impossible, Hyun-soo said. Your language was always capable of creation. You just chose to use it only for destruction. As more void speakers rediscovered their individual identities, they began to remember what they had lost. They remembered the joy of learning something new, the satisfaction of helping others, and the warmth of friendship. Some of them wept for the first time in millions of years as they realized what they had become. Dr. Ai-cha Lim, monitoring the situation from Earth, detected massive changes in the void speaker fleet. The energy patterns are completely different, she reported. It's like they're transforming at a molecular level. On the research station, So Min watched in amazement as the alien symbols began to change. The cold, threatening writing was being replaced by warm, welcoming messages. The station itself was transforming from a weapon into something like a school. They're offering to teach us, she reported to the fleet. The void speakers want to share their knowledge instead of stealing. Throughout the galaxy, the change spread like wildfire. Void speaker ships that had been preparing to harvest entire worlds suddenly stopped their attacks. Instead, they began broadcasting offers of friendship and cooperation. The transformation wasn't complete everywhere. Some void speakers, led by the most ancient and stubborn members of the collective, refused to give up their old ways. They tried to continue the harvest despite the growing rebellion among their own people. But they found themselves fighting not just against the younger species of the galaxy, but against their own transformed companions. Former void speakers used their reality-shaping language to protect the very worlds they had once planned to consume. Hyunsu, still changed, but now more human than alien, became the first ambassador of what they called the New Compact. His job was to help both sides understand each other and work together instead of fighting. "We don't have to be enemies," he told the gathered representatives of hundreds of species. "The void speakers have knowledge that could benefit everyone, and we have something they need even more than knowledge." "What's that?" asked Tae Young-han. "We have what they lost," Hyunsu replied. "Hope, wonder, the ability to see beauty in small things." They became so focused on being powerful that they forgot how to be happy. The transformation of the galaxy took years, but it was the most remarkable period in galactic history. Ancient void speaker technology was used to heal worlds that had been damaged by war. Their knowledge of the universe helped solve problems that had plagued younger species for centuries. In return, the younger species taught the void speakers how to feel joy again. They showed them art, music, and literature. They reminded them that the universe was full of wonders that didn't need to be conquered or consumed, just appreciated. Hyunsu, though permanently changed by his experience, became a symbol of what was possible when different species chose cooperation over conflict. His blue skin and glowing eyes marked him as someone who belonged to both worlds, human and void speaker. Years later, on a world that had once been marked for harvest, a small human child named Bin-Ai Song played with friends from a dozen different species. Some were the children of former void speakers who had learned to be individuals again. Others came from species that had been saved from consumption. As they played together, they spoke in 3 languages: their native tongues, Galactic, Standard, and the ancient void speaker language. But when they used the old tongue, it wasn't to command or control. It was to create games of light and wonder, to build castles in the air, and to paint pictures with pure thought. The language that had once threatened to destroy the galaxy had become a tool for play, learning, and joy. And somewhere on the old research station, now converted into a school where young beings from across the galaxy came to learn, the ancient symbols still glowed on the walls. But their message had changed completely. Instead of speaking of conquest and hunger, they now told stories of friendship, cooperation, and the endless possibilities that opened up when former enemies chose to speak the same language of peace. The void speakers had finally found what they had been searching for all along. Not subjects to rule over, but equals to stand beside them as they explored the infinite wonders of the universe together.